Venti is an insane character that offers crowd control and damage boosts to your team in Genshin Impact. In this video, we're covering everything from what Venti can do for your team, how you should build him, what artifacts you're looking for as you approach the end game of current Genshin Impact, and everything that you should know when using Venti. The role and goal Venti provides for your party is the combination of crowd control as well as the ability to spread different sort of elements from your teammates to the other members of the enemy team, damaging them at the same time, and also reducing the resistances of those enemies to said elements. You're going to either be doing this through his elemental skill, Skyward Sonnet, which either has two different modes. You can press it for a short knockup that deals a Nemo damage and launches the enemy for a brief amount of time, or you can hold it, which then does a large knockup and allowing you to dodge oncoming enemy attacks and knocking the opponents up in the air for a longer amount of time, allowing you to juggle them with the different elemental combinations while they're defenseless. His ultimate, when grants old, his elemental burst here, is a fantastic. It is the skill that you're designing Venti around in your party. It has a low cooldown, and we're going to lower this skill's cooldown even more. It sucks enemies up, spreads the elemental damage elements that you have afflicted onto them, and in addition to that, it can absorb the first element it comes into contact with, allowing you to even have Venti target those weakened enemies with Wind's Grand Old. At the first Ascension rank, you will gain the talent of Embrace the Winds, where if you use the hold version of Skyward Sonnet, it creates an up current that lasts for 20 seconds. This allows not only Venti to dodge attacks, but your teammates to dodge attacks by dodging up over them with the glider, and then even coming down on them with jumping attacks and plummeting into the ground. Very fantastic damage, especially when using this in conjunction with Claymore users. A lot of Claymore users do a phenomenal amount of plunging damage in combination with Embrace of the Wind. So this allows you to pull off some very flashy and strong combinations of attacks. His last talent that is available with Storm Eye at the Ascension level of 4 here is going to give Venti 15 energy back after his elemental burst, the Wind's Grand Ode, ends. This is 25% of the energy that you do need to recast Wind's Grand Ode. In addition to that, if you absorb an element with Wind's Grand Ode, every character on your party is also going to receive 15 energy for the corresponding element. So if you absorb a Thunder elemental attack with Wind's Grand Old, all of your Thunder characters will then get 15 energy. So this helps not only fuel his own elemental burst, but the rest of your parties as well. Venti helps your team fly across the battlefield, pummeling your opponents with elemental combination skills, inflicting large amounts of damage and avoiding large amounts of incoming damage through his crowd control. In your travels in Genshin Impact, you will come across many pieces of gear that you may not necessarily need or think are even good, but they will be phenomenal for Venti. Let's head into that right now. Venti, being a support type character in Genshin Impact, is heavily reliant on being able to use specifically for him his elemental burst, as well as increasing the amount of damage he does with his own elemental combination attack, Swirl. Venti's best build is by far a support elemental mastery character. This is going to allow him to get constant access to Wind's Grand Ode, his elemental burst, which then allows him to help the rest of your party gain access to their elemental bursts at extreme speeds. His best weapon currently in Genshin Impact is the Favonius Warbow. This is due largely to the amount of crazy energy recharge it has as a substat. At level 50 refinement rank 1, it still has 39.7% energy recharge. If you can't gain access to the Favonius Warbow, look for a bow that has energy recharge or elemental mastery, because you can get energy recharge in other sources, but there's just so much on the Warbow, you cannot go wrong with this. The ability on it is Windfall as well, which can also help you gain access to that elemental burst even faster, because when you land a critical hit, you have a 60% chance to gain 6 energy for Venti, further accelerating you towards your extremely powerful elemental Burst. This weapon, in combination with his Ascension Rank 4 talent Windfall, is the core backbone to the Elemental Burst spamming strategy that Venti is known for. In your travels through Genshin Impact, you are going to come across a ton of different artifacts, but the ones that you're really looking for Venti, for substats, you're looking for Elemental Mastery as well as more energy recharge rate. He is a support character in this build, and to utilize him to the best of your abilities, these are the two stats that you're really looking for as time goes on. When equipped with the Favonius Warbow, you are already going to have an incredible amount of energy recharge. So as you are looking for artifacts, you don't necessarily need energy recharge as the main stat artifact, but what you are going to try to look for is energy recharge as a substat. The actual stat you're looking for as you are traveling through Genshin Impact is Elemental Mastery main stat. This increases the amount of swirl damage that Venti does do when he's using his Elemental Burst or his Elemental Skill. This is going to be a fantastic way for him to supply supplemental damage for your team as you apply the elemental combination of Swirl to your enemies. Crowd control, damage, everything. But his best set by far that you can hope to obtain in Genshin Impact is the Viridescent Venerers set. This set offers an extremely unique benefit to including Venti on your team, strictly because of the 4-piece bonus. Not only does it increase swirl damage by 60%, further incentivizing you to use Elemental Mastery to gain even more swirl damage, but it has the most important part: decreases opponents' elemental resistance to the element infused in the swirl by 40% for 10 seconds. This allows Venti to support not only your team through crowd control, not only your team through supplemental damage with swirl and spreading the other elements that you're using, but also increasing the damage of your main damage dealer, say Diluc, Xiangling, Official, anyone that you're using as your main damage dealer, especially if they're using elemental attacks. It will reduce the resist by 40%. You can even reduce the resist below 0. This is simply just free damage. Crowd control, damage on his own, as well as increasing the damage of your primary source of damage, makes Venti one of, if not the best support character currently in Genshin Impact. Now, don't worry if you cannot get your hands on the Favonius Warbow. There are some alternatives for you to look forwards to. There is the Sacrificial Bow, which has a lesser amount of energy recharge on the bow, and the ability on it is Composed, which gives you a slight chance to reset his elemental skill when it does do damage to an enemy. This is not as good as the Favonius Warbow because it has much less energy recharge on the bow itself. If you want a more offensive version of Venti, maybe you have more energy recharge in your artifacts. You weren't able to get Elemental Mastery in your artifacts, but you were able to get a ton of energy recharge. You could also go with the Stringless, which has Elemental Mastery on it as well. It also increases Elemental Skill and Elemental Burst damage by 30%. Now, in addition to getting energy recharge in Elemental Mastery on Venti, some other stats that you could be looking for in your artifact slot is attack percent and crit chance percent and crit damage percent. It's going to be exceptionally hard to gain access to all of them: energy recharge, elemental mastery, crit hit chance, crit hit damage, and attack percent. So as you start working on your endgame Venti build, make sure that you have enough energy recharge to acquire your ultimate energy elemental burst before the cooldown is over, and then work on your elemental mastery, and then your attack, and then your crit chance and your crit damage. This is going to allow you to have an extremely offensive support character for your use in Genshin Impact. Speaking of artifacts, until you get your hands on the Viridescent Venerers set, what sort of set is good for Venti? You're strictly looking for some elemental mastery 2-piece sets. These can be seen from the instructor set. There's a lot of different sets that exist in Genshin Impact. If you're not approaching endgame though, you should check out the top 5 artifact sets that you should farm and heed the advice in there. Now, Venti being a 5-star base character, many of you may be asking how strong of an impact do his constellations make to this support element build. The best constellation that he does have access to for the support type build is sadly the final constellation, Storm of Defiance, level 6 constellation. Targets who take damage from Wind's Grand Ode have their Anemo resist decreased by 20%, and then if Wind's Grand Ode, the elemental burst, absorbs an element then the resistance to that corresponding element is also decreased by 20%. So it's like a weaker version of the Viridescent Venerer set. If you have this in combination with that set, you do get the 60% elemental decrease, but even without this one, you still have the 40%. He's still able to fulfill that critical role, but thankfully he has no single constellation that actually changes his play style, so you can rest assured that your 0 constellation Venti will act just the same as a max constellation Venti will do. With the proper build, the proper team composition, and support, Venti does insane things, as you can see, for your team with the crowd control, reducing damage by just keeping those enemies hard CC, doing damage on his own, and increasing the damage that your team does as well with his swirl elemental resistance reduction reactions. When used in this manner, Venti will propel you to heights that you didn't even know that you could reach. So that's it, guys. This is going to be the end of the guide for Venti. Make sure you double check everything. If you have questions, leave them down below as always. If you want more in-depth information on Genshin Impact, do check out the playlist on the channel for Genshin Impact. Until then, guys, have fun out there in the world of Genshin Impact, and I'll see you in the next one.